Happy Sabbath, saints. Happy Sabbath. So good to be with you.
Also with you.
God is good. All right? God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. So today, I want to discuss God. I think it's a good subject, right? Proof of the existence of God. This title is the Without Excuse, is right from Scripture. I'm not going to delve into too much Scripture today because much like in the first century, when they went out of the realm of Israel and were preaching to the various peoples, they weren't preaching to people who were people of Scripture. They were preaching to people who were pagans, heathens of different types. And how did they preach God to them? All right. So that's kind of what I want to hit at today. I want to begin with this quote. Who all here has seen God's Not Dead, the original movie? Right? You all seen God's Not Dead? All right. So in this movie, there's a character named Josh Wheaton. He's a freshman college student, and he's required to take a certain course in philosophy, and his teacher is a militant atheist. And so he asked everyone to sign this paper, God's not dead. Let's get it over. And Josh refused to, so he ended up accepting a challenge to prove the existence of God, as it were. But as he began in his first session of debate, he began with saying this: atheists say that no one can prove the existence of God. And they're right, was his comment. But I say no one can disprove that God exists. Okay? Now, depending on what he means by this statement, I can possibly agree, but the way I've taken it, I don't agree with the statement. People will often say, you can't prove God, that you just got to take it on faith. And I'll tell you, that's not what the Scripture says. That's not at all what the Scripture says. The Scripture says there's evidence for God. In other words, there's proof. And I find proof is the basis of the word prove. And if there's proof for God, then you can prove God. Right? Same way in a court of law, there's evidence. And evidence proves or disproves the allegations in the court. Right? So I believe that God has given evidence of himself, and the Scripture attests to that. So if you are one who are saying, if you're out and you're talking with people, you're talking with coworkers, you're at the coffee shop, you're out, whatever, you get into a conversation about God, don't say, oh, I can't prove it, or there's no proof, but I just believe, or because look what he's done in my life. All kinds of people say, look what he's done in my life for whatever he or it is. Doesn't necessarily prove God, but there is evidence of a creator. All right, and it's actually all around us. All right, here's where my title comes from. In Romans 1, Paul, writing to the church there, says, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them. So there's things that might be known of God, and it's revealed. It's made manifest in them. He goes on to say, God has showed it to them. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. What Paul is saying is that from the beginning of creation, go back to the time of better sheets, from in the beginning, God created. From that time, there has been evidence of a creator. From the first man, first woman on down, there was evidence of a creator. And so mankind is without excuse, is what Paul is arguing here. It wasn't that because we come into our latter days, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of our modern scientific marvels that are evidence of God, but didn't have to wait till we can break out microscopes or come to understand scientific laws. Paul says these evidence have been here since the creation of the world. And they're not hidden, he says they're clearly seen. It ain't some looking through a glass darkly. It's evidence. It's clearly seen. And it's understood by the things that are made. All right? Here it is. This is the non-King James. This is a NLT, if I recall correctly. God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. And here's what the reality is. This is something we often bring up. People who deny God aren't doing it on evidence. Most of it is due to the heart. The same way a criminal can't find a cop, right? They don't want to. They suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and the sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. Right? Do you guys understand the force of this argument and what he's saying here? The world is without excuse when they behold the creation, when they see the things God has made. From the earth, the trees, man, one of the incredible machine, especially as we got into science and come to learn how intricate this body is. The heavens. Right? Now, just like this image here, I didn't create this image. Somebody created this image. How do I know that? Well, because it exists. It's a creation. And therefore, a creation requires a creator. I probably have never seen this person, heard this person talk, embraced this person, but somebody created this image. Right? This home I'm in, likewise, it's evident it has a builder. It's a building. It requires a builder. It's evidence of the builder. It's evidence of a creator. Psalm 19, which I believe Paul was building part of his argumentation on in the book of Romans, both in Romans 1 and then later on in Romans 10. He says, the heavens declare the glory of God. They surely do. The firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day they're uttering speech, and night unto night they're showing knowledge. And there is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. And then he set the tabernacle for the sun, which is the bridegroom is coming out of his chamber and rejoicing as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit to the ends of it, and there's nothing hid from the heat thereof. And he's saying, look, we have evidence that declares, one, there's a creator, and two, declares his glory. That this one, in what he's made, doesn't matter what language you speak, what you hear, it's there. And everyone can see it. Look up. Right? There's nowhere where their voice is not heard. Like I said, Paul goes on to this, expounds on this in Romans. When he's talking about how should we then preach? How should they hear if there's their voice is going out to all the world? There's evidence that there's a creator. There's evidence of his glory in the things that are made. Now, we can look at some more interesting, intricate things. I've shared these things on my Facebook page maybe a year or two ago. Look at some of these interesting things here. Now, what are all these? These are mainly orchids up here. If you notice, the one up there looks like a monkey. The one looks like an egret, the bird. One looks like little purple ducks. And look at that one, looks like a leaf. Oh, because that's not a leaf. Because that one is a creature. That's a lizard that looks like a leaf. Now again, how does random chance bring this about? How do the plants know how to look like the animals, or the animals know how to look like the plants? Yeah. And again, various leaf bugs. You got the one up there looking like a fall leaf, the green leaf. Then we got the one that looks like a. Then we got this animal. Likes to jump on the Roland at times. Zoe, stop. All right. Sorry, my dog's chasing my cat. We got this moth here that looks like a spider to ward off predators from eating it. Makes it look bigger. Some more orchids here. Look at this one here, like a purple bird. These ones look like little babies wrapped up. One looks like a little skull. One looks like little dancers or little birds. This all happened by random accident, right? I mean, that's just some of them. There's more that are available, but it's awesome to consider some of these things. Some other things I've recently shared. I shared an article about math and how math is not a made up thing. It's something that's discovered, and that it's evident that math was used to write everything we see. And it goes into matters of like fractals or Fibonacci numbers, the golden spiral, the golden angle, all those things that are evident. They're the fingerprint of God. It's on the seashells. It's on pineapple. It's, again, if you're not familiar with these things, go check these things out. Google Fibonacci numbers, the golden spiral, learn some interesting things that God's fingerprint is upon these things. Frank Turek, he's a Christian apologist. He has said there's more code and sophisticated nano machinery in just one of your 40 trillion cells. I mean, stop and absorb this thing. One, you have 40 trillion cells in your body. That's a huge number. But in just one of those 40 trillion cells, there's more sophisticated nano machinery and code than in the smartphone. And probably every other gadget that you own. If the code and the nanomachinery in your smartphone requires intelligence, wouldn't the far superior technology inside of you also require intelligence? So I'm saying, so in this age, when they were able to map the human genome and look at DNA, see all these things, the more they look, whether out or in, God is there saying, here I am. I'm your maker. I'm your creator. James Tour, he's a nanoscientist. He says, I build molecules for a living. I can't begin to tell you how difficult that job is. I stand in awe of God because of what he has done through his creation. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. Now again, the push for atheism is a big thing these days in the public school system and all that, where they're trying to get people to pull away from God and believe in the existence of the Creator. But the foundations of sections of our science were from Bible-believing men like Isaac Newton and others who discovered the sciences and laid the foundation for what is here. They want to say today that if the problem with kids being homeschooled and being taught about Christian, that it's going to destroy their view of science, and that's total falsehood. It was faithful Christian men who discovered these things and gave them the basis for where they've gone off the road. Right? Yeah. Good point. Rhonda said, now with this guy, he says he builds molecules, realizing he ain't just sitting there in a lab and speaking something into existence and then do it. No, he's taking existing material. Reminds me of the little joke about the atheist and God and the scientist and God arguing, and well, I can build from nothing, and the guy starts digging in the dirt, and God's like, no, that's my dirt. You make your own. Because they want to say they can make life from non-life, and the reality is they can't. That was proved by another great scientist, Louis Pasteur. He showed that life cannot come from non-life, and that's an important point for us to know and understand. The Miller-Urey experiments didn't function. Falsehood. All right, it's a known law of science. It's called biogenesis, or abiogenesis. Life cannot come from non-life. Ming Wang, he's a former atheist. He's an ophthalmologist. He's a refractive surgeon, laser physics founder of the Wang Vision 3D Cataract and LASIK Center. So this guy's an eye surgeon. He says, I came to know Jesus Christ because I did not find in science the answer to life's questions for which I was searching. Actually, the more I learned about science, the more, not less, evidence I saw of God's creation and design. The very complexity of the human eye is, in fact, the most powerful evidence of the existence of God. And this grabbed me right away when I first found this, because the eye is often something, when I'm off preaching to people, atheist or whatever, I'll bring up the human eye, because it's an incredible design of what he did with it. The human eye needs about 40 subsystems all working together in harmony with each other. They have to be in harmony. They have to work together. So logically, they all had to appear instantly together, or we'd all be blind. The whole concept of it, over the course of, for what? If the whole concept of microevolution or adaptation is that these things are working towards something, they have to have function. For gain of function, there has to be information that's not added in generations for gain of function. But for gain of function, there's no function if the 40 subsystems aren't working together. So they all had to appear at once. All right. And they don't. But so what I'll often tell people on the streets is that you consider like some of the cameras on some of these, or even some like the most intense cameras out there, like a P1000 or something. You can like zoom in on the moon or all this type of stuff. They have some pretty high def cameras, but they pale in comparison to the human eye. You think about all the intelligence that goes in to build a camera, to create the lens, to do these things. Yet you want to argue that no intelligence made this. Stop and think it through. How is that possible? The fact is, everything has a beginning. Everything has a beginning. Let me throw in the caveat here with one exception. Everything natural has a beginning. So, what came first? The chicken or the egg? Chicken or egg? Chicken or egg? Chicken or egg? Yes. This is a bit of a false dilemma here because the answer is C. I would perceive from the scriptures. C is both. Because you see, when God created Adam and Eve, they were already fruitful. When he created the trees, they already had seeds within them. I would say that when he created the chicken, the egg was already inside the chicken. Didn't have to wait to reach maturity. God created things in a mature state. So I'd say they were both at the same time. Right? But the reality is, both the chicken and the egg had a beginning. Where do they come from? There hasn't been an eternal chicken that has always been laying eggs, or an egg that's always been there producing chickens. That had to have a cause. Just like I'm here, and I'm here as evidence that I had parents, because we know the natural law of how people are made. And the very fact that I stand here as evidence that there was two people who made it and created me. And they stand as evidence of two people who created my father, two people who created my mother, so far and so forth. But we also know man is not eternal. So man had a beginning. All right? So we got to think through these things philosophically. Because, again, a lot of people aren't hearing this. So we need to be able to speak to people and have them think. I've used the analogy before about putting a pebble in someone's shoe. So as they walk away, they can't stop thinking about what you planted in their shoe. They're going to keep thinking about it. So back to this tree in this universe. The tree had a beginning. The mountains had a beginning. The stars had a beginning. And there is no scientific evidence that opposes that. Now, you guys have heard of the multiverse, right? It's not just a Marvel thing. It's not just in the Marvel movies, but it's actually a theory from atheist scientists who want to deny, because they recognize the hand of design in the intricate nature of things in this universe, that they say, well, if there was multiple universes, surely one of them would bring this about. That's kind of where they're going with the idea of a multiverse, is that it widens their time and chance. Just like they want to add more and more years, because more years will allow more change. But if there's multiple universes, surely one of them was bound to bring forth life and bring about what we have. There is no scientific evidence for such a concept as a multiverse. The scriptures do not teach of a multiverse either, by the way. So there's something that's known as the Cosmological Argument. Okay, and I want to share this. This isn't going to be a long teaching today. It's just want to get some ideas out here to equip all of us to be able to spread the good news by letting people know there is a maker that we're all subject to, and there's an answer for our sin in Jesus Christ. Okay, so I'm going to lay some of that groundwork here today with this. So the cosmological argument is that, one, everything that begins to exist must have a cause. All right? That's a sound thing. We know that because we see that. Again, in everything that we see, we know that something caused it. I came about from a cause. The dog, the cat here, they came about from a cause. The house came about from a cause. This technology came about from a cause. All right? Number two, the universe began to exist. And again, Science doesn't deny that. In fact, that's why they put forth the Big Bang Theory, because they know the universe, just like I said, people aren't eternal. They haven't been always been. There's always been a person producing a person producing a person. That's not always been. There's not always been dogs producing. These things came into being at some point. Something had to cause the first dogs, the first people, the first chickens, the first mountains, the first hills, the first waters, the first planets. There has to be a first cause for all of this. They know, again, this should be evident, nothing can create itself, right? If something doesn't exist, it can't make itself exist because it has to exist to make something to exist, right? That should be pretty evident. But for as much intelligence as often held in the scientific community, sometimes they fighting so hard against the evidence of God. They want to claim that there was some little dot that appeared and swirled and exploded and created everything that we see and eventually brought about us. But where'd the dot come from? Where'd the space come from that it was put in? There has to be a first cause. I'm not agreeing with their Big Bang Theory, by the way. Don't misunderstand that. I'm just saying their own testimony testifies against them. They know the universe is not eternal.
Did you mention who this Kalam guy is here, or is that a person that came up with this? Is he an atheist? Did you say?
No. This is not an atheist argument.
Okay.
Because they would be arguing then for God.
All right.
The claim cosmological argument goes back centuries. It's been argued from theists about evidence of a creator. So, simple 3 points. Everything that begins, everything that's here had to have a cause. It had to have a beginning. The universe itself began to exist. Science admits that. That's why I said they have the Big Bang Theory, and they understand expansion. As the scripture says, he stretched out the heavens. And they're seeing expansion. And therefore, if it's expansion, that means that they have a beginning. There's also laws. Timothy mentioned one about thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, about everything tends to disorder. Energy isn't being added. They're showing, since we still have usable energy in this system, it shows that our clock is 1 coming down, but 2, it hasn't always existed. So like known laws of science should point them to the creator. Again, and if there's laws of science, how do the laws exist without a lawgiver? Laws of gravity and DNA sequencing and all these things that exist, right? Proving that God exists, 7 simple and logical steps. Okay, this is like just a little bit longer of the Kalam argument, but it's similar. The universe exists, 1. 2, the universe cannot be infinitely old, because if it were, it would have entered into the state of entropy long ago. Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics, which states that all things are moving towards chaos and non-usable energy. In other words, everything is running down. 3, the universe is not in a state of non-usable energy, therefore is not infinitely old. If the universe were infinitely old, the universe would have run out of usable energy long ago. 4, since the universe is not infinitely old, it had a beginning. This brings us to the start of the Kalam argument right here. Right? The universe could not have brought itself into existence. Like I said, that's common sense should tell us that. There's no will of something to will something to happen if it doesn't even exist. Something, therefore, before the universe and greater than the universe had to bring the universe into existence. That something, by definition, was necessarily supernatural and existing outside the laws of physics and nature. That something is God, who by definition is supernatural, all-powerful, infinite, and eternal. Right? So the scripture clearly proves, or the scripture clearly says that there's evidence for God, and it clearly is out there. We need to be able to show people and point to it and say, here's evidence of the Creator. It's all around you. And I know people have had the facts distorted in the school systems and social media even, people pushing up atheist perspectives. But the evidence is there, and it's clear, and it's pretty simple to get to the heart of it, isn't it? I mean, the claim principle is it's only three things. And it can even be probably broke down more. It exists. There has to be first cause. That's a known scientific law, first cause. Okay? And they want to talk about singularity. The singularity brought it about. Yeah, the singularity is God. He is the first cause of all these things. So there's 4 miracles of atheism. 1, getting something from nothing. Like I said, even coming back to that concept of the Big Bang, there's a little swirling dot. Where'd the dot come from? Where'd the space come from in which that dot was? Again, I don't believe there's a little swirling dot. I don't believe that concept, but that's the argumentation of science. Where did all this come from? It couldn't have been from nothing. Where did time come from? Where did space come from? All right. Point number 2, getting life from non-life. It doesn't happen. There's a known law of science. You can either look at abiogenesis or biogenesis, meaning that life has to come from life. Abiogenesis is that life cannot come from non-life. Remember, that's the Greek negative. Bio, life, Genesis, the beginning. You cannot have life from non-life. So the first cause had to have life within itself. Had to exist. And the first cause has to be eternal because it can't have a beginning or it's not the first cause. So again, just looking through this logically, we can see our God is eternal because he's the first cause and he had to always exist, or he would not be first cause. Whoever created God would be first cause. Or wait, whoever created, you can go back infinitely in that claim, but there's only one first cause. That's why it's first. And that first cause is God, and he's eternal, and he's powerful, and he is life. Atheism also has us believe that we got order out of chaos. From the exploding dot to the primordial soup, is one creation ministry likes to put it, from goo to you, molecules to man. And that's, again, not what we see in nature and laws of science. In fact, we see that law of thermodynamics, that things tend to disorder. You know, leave your house untouched, and you're going to see nature work on it, and you're going to see your house become dilapidated. It doesn't build a house over time. It breaks down the house over time. All right? We get chaos from the order that was if we're not maintaining the order. So this also shows that God is a person of maintenance, that he maintains us, he sustains us, like we saw, like we did with Israel in the wilderness. Right? And then getting the immaterial from physical matter. Right? What is life? What is consciousness? What is our conscience altogether, the soul, the spirit of man? How did that come about from immaterial world? If we're going to say a swirling dot made the immaterial, or if the physical dot made the physical world, how did it make the immaterial world? How did the conscience of man come about? how did the sense of morality come about? Romans 2, when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law to themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts. Their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing us excusing one another in the day when God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. The reality is God has placed a conscience in every one of us who are made in his image and likeness. And that conscience accuses us and excuses us. Things that we're doing, God gives us a sense, I shouldn't do this. When you're contemplating doing something, I probably shouldn't do this. Or if you do it, then that guilt will pounce on you. And you know it. God's placed it in everyone. So I stated in times past, God has created us, another aspect in this is God created us to be worshipers. And it's evident because all of us worship. Even atheists worship. It's a matter of who or what you worship. That is the bent with which he's created us. We have a bend towards worshiping. We by nature know there is deity. We know there is something beyond us. And he's placed this in the hearts of us all. In Acts 14 here, let's start to close here in Acts 14. This is an example of Paul preaching to people who are not people of the book. They're preaching to the pagans. And he says in verse 15 to 17, he says, you should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all things that are therein. He began by preaching them the Creator. He says that this God in times past allowed the nations to walk their own ways, but he has not left himself without witness. Oh, there's witness for God, not only in the creation, but even in our lives, in what he does here in this world, where I mentioned a little bit ago how he's also the God of providence, a God of sustainer. And here's what Paul's driving at here. He left himself not without witness in that he did good. He gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. You ever think about the blessings that we have here in this world? Yes, I realize sin has tainted a lot. But God has blessed us with so many things, so much goodness, so much richness. And a lot of it we take for granted. He didn't have to give us eyes like this that can see the way they see and see all the colors, make all the colors in the world. It could have been a blah, black and white, gray world. But he gave us joy and color. I mean, I know many of you are lovers of color and photos of the beauty, sunsets, trees and the changes, the snow upon the trees. This the beauty in this world. We're just singing about the beauty of the earth, the things that he's done. That shows God's benevolence, his joy and his creativeness, and that he's blessed us to be able to enjoy those things. He doesn't have to give us a tongue that could taste different flavors of different things. I mean, if he created us to eat, we needed this energy. It could have just been like putting gas in a gas tank. I mean, the car doesn't know, oh, that's a bad tasting gas, but we know if something tastes good, it tastes bad. He gave it. That's a blessing. Do we ever stop and think about the Creator and why he's given us these opportunities for joy and pleasure? I know it's like a little different to consider. Or the very fact that he has given us a planet that with so many symbiotic things here about how, like, you know, we exhale and the plants take in what we exhale and they bring out what we need. We live together. It's just awesome to consider him and his thoughts towards us and what he knew his creation needed and how everything had to work together and the pleasures and opportunities he's given us all. Right? And these are simple little things that we can sit there and pebble in someone's shoe to give them. You ever think about this? Ever think about your conscience while you have one? If you came from nothing, if there's no spiritual component to man, what is that? You know, like one of the old Moody Science videos where he's talking about, if you take a chemical measure of a man 1 second before death and 1 second after, what's the chemical difference? You're not gonna know, but there's an obvious difference. What's gone? The spark of life. Where'd that come from? Right? Oh, a little bit smaller writing than I expected here. All right. Good thing I gave us eyes. So this is a partial list from gotquestions.org. They did a little article about God, knowing how God is God amongst the religions, and this is an excerpt from it. He said, we learned some interesting things from this God about who created the universe. That one, he is supernatural in nature because he exists outside of creation. All right. He's incredibly powerful to create all that is known. That he's eternal. He's self-existent because he exists outside of time and space. That he is omnipresent. He created space and he's not limited by it. He is immaterial because he transcends space. He is personal. The impersonal can't create personality. And we see his care for us again throughout. He is throughout his creation and his continued providence for us. He is necessary as everything depends on him. He is intelligent supremely to create everything. He is purposeful as he deliberately created everything. Like I said, he didn't have to sit there and say, oh, well, no, maybe not that. No. God knows. He knows the end from the beginning. And he knew how these things had to operate. He is moral. No moral law can exist without a lawgiver, and he is caring for, otherwise no moral laws would have been given. He wouldn't have planted his law in our hearts that he did, so that if we would have an ear to hear, that we would walk out and we would walk in harmony, it would be glorifying him. All right. So brief today, yes, but don't let anyone pull you or move you away with things that may sound logical, but ultimately the logic of the atheist is illogical. And true logic, God-given logic, he gave us brains to think these things through, as well as true science, screams out there's a creator. The universe cries for a first cause. The things made cry out about the nature of that first cause, who he is, his personality, his love for us, his providence for us. All right. That's it for today. God bless and please keep you all.